Wurundjeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, councillors. Special meeting for two purposes today. Councillor Leng is going to be late, I'm told now, so he's not an apology. So we'll accept him when he gets here. Item number 2, adoption of the 2021 to 2025 Community Vision Plan. We want to have a broad discussion, or does someone want to move that way initially? There's a recommendation there. What would you like to do, councillors?
I'm happy to move that way to start the discussion.
Well, Councillor Bland beat you to it, Councillor Roundtree.
Okay, so no worries.
You'll be a seconder if you're happy.
Yes.
Perhaps, Councillor Bland, do you wish to speak to it, or you want the CEO to perhaps give us a broad précis where we're at?
We'll go with a broad base, and then I'm sure there's lots of discussion to happen.
Okay.
So from a broad perspective, as you were aware, you saw the draft plan, and then we went back to community consultation in 3 communities, Tailem Bend, Meningie and Tintanawa. We appreciate that there wasn't a lot of time between the council meeting that adopted the draft and the second round of community consultation. So the level of participation wasn't great, but people still had the opportunity to contact us if they wanted to. The information that we've received since the draft was developed, and this documentation is basically not material. There were no new issues that emerged during that time. So the copy that you have in front of you now is really just similar to the draft, except with the typos and things taken out of it. So there has been no changes that are of material that I need to draw your attention to.
Councillor Bland, you want to lead?
Mr. Mayor, I'm actually reasonably happy with the document overall. I think what falls out of it now becomes slightly different, in that we'll have discussion about the overarching headings about what that actually means and how to move forward.
Perhaps, Richard, do you want to sort of give a précis of where that next level process is at?
So we've already had a meeting of senior staff down to coordinator level, basically a workshop a week or so ago to go through each of those topics and to say from their perspective what sits underneath them in terms of what we need to do. Now, as you'd appreciate, some of those things are business as usual, and they're things that we do currently or are considering, and some things are new. We haven't put that output together yet, but so we've definitely started the process of what it will look like. And then we will have a workshop with you as to what you think sits under each of these things and which years it could possibly belong to, and then how do we develop those plans from there. So there's quite a bit of work to be done now between now and the ABP, because from an ABP perspective, we also want the information from this document as it relates to the first year to be part of that planning.
So how long, through you, Mr. Mayor, do we anticipate having that workshop with us?
How long?
How long before we have that workshop?
So that will have to be quite soon as part of the budget process. I don't think we've actually set a date yet. If you have something in the meantime, please feel free to send me your thoughts and comments so that we can include them along the way. It doesn't have to wait until we formally ask you what you think should go in there.
Assuming some of that will.
Open for it. I'll just allow some discussion around this.
I have just a couple of little things. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll take you, Councillor Roundtree.
Okay, so just probably one that just needs a bit more explaining. On page 16 under vision, the word lives doesn't make sense to me in that sentence. I just think that needs to be reworked, unless I'm just reading it wrong. But okay, I've read it about 5 times and it's just not gelling with me what that's supposed to mean, the word lives in that sentence.
Maybe it's lives in a valued environment.
Well, I wondered whether it was lives, and that didn't make sense either, because it starts off talking in one tense and then swaps halfway through. But maybe I am reading it wrong, and if it makes sense to everybody else, I'm happy to not make an issue of it. But I just thought, seeing it's our vision, it probably wants to be crystal clear.
Maybe, Councillor Antry, would you be happy if we just park that, and then when we do any revision on the document into the future, we'll have another look at it?
Sure. Does anyone else have an issue with how it reads, or is that just me? Because I don't want you to go to any effort if I'm the only one that's not understanding that vision clearly. The other just
Unusual. I agree, it's a little bit unusual.
the other question I had was, we talk about an annual progress review. Do we need to lock in, or is it already locked in at what point that review to gauge how we're going against this plan? Is that done at the end of every year or the beginning of the following year? What's the expectation of the review?
So we have already started to look at which dates and which month it makes sense in terms of our yearly planning, and it will be just locked into the particular month. I'm thinking it's probably around September of each year, after the budget process has gone through, that we have, or you could make it February, but there's two natural spots for it, one just after the budget or one just at the beginning of the budget. So, but we're locking those dates in now so that it'll just be part of our planning, and you'll see it as part of the schedule for the coming 12 months.
Thank you. And the other thing, I had just made an observation. So I was looking at the previous strategic plan compared to this one. A couple of little things. I really like the layout of how this one's put together. I think it's actually very reader friendly, and it doesn't bog you down with big words and like 5.2s and numbers that might make people not read it. I think the way it's presented is very reader friendly. But I noticed that it says, in comparing the two, a population has gone down from 5,585 to 5,429. However, our rateable properties has increased from 3,761 to 4,537. And I was just wondering if that does that make sense? And is that what you were expecting? Rateable properties up, but number of people down?
So the population probably doesn't have a strong correlation to the rateable properties, because some of them may be owned from outside the district.
Okay.
A whole lot of reasons how rateable properties end up, and generally, correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne, but there's not a strong correlation in that people may be outside the district who own it, or people could be renting properties in here. So it wasn't unexpected or expected.
So the number of rateable properties has increased in general, though.
So some of that was around the work that we did in terms of that line-by-line review that Leanne has been undertaking, and that we briefed you on, I think, probably a couple of weeks ago with David Hope in the room. So it's again just basically a tidy up.
Okay, so that's not necessarily an increase, it's just a tidy up, really.
Councillor Arthur was next.
I just, the plan to me is too highfalutin. We were supposed to be looking at 2021, 2025. That's 4 years to do things. Some of the things in here are on the 50-year plan or the 30-year plan. So I had a bit of a conflab with quite a few people down our way at the cricket on Saturday, and went through this, and they said, why doesn't the council put out something about 10 pages of things they can actually achieve? And that was the thing. Now, a lot of the things even in the document now are things that we don't have control over. And, like, let's look at what we can do, substantially do, instead of a dream of what we can do.
Could you give me an example of where you think that?
Well, the one about weeds.
What page are we on?
Weeds, I should have written the paper down, but that would be under environment, wouldn't it?
Point 4.
And undertake Kissing approach to weed control off the district through the implementation of council's wheel management strategy. The only weeds the council has to look after are weeds that are on their own property.
And that's
The rest of the weeds is landscape essays. So it's not a thought. It should be a given. There's a couple other things there that should be under your asset management.
Through you, Mayor, the question when we developed this plan, councillor, goes to the very heart of what you're saying, in that there was general agreement in the room when we had that very first workshop that we didn't want high-level strategic things, and we wanted business as usual activity, only business as usual activity done better. And that's why you'll see reference to some things that you think should just be business as usual, because that's what the conversation was in terms of the initial planning for this particular report.
I think also, if I might, through you, Mr. Mayor, to that, and point 2 of the environmental one refers to working with other agencies. And I think part of our role is advocacy, and maybe that word needs a little bit advocate for.
So, thank you, Councillor Bean. One of the things with the action items in here is that council could play 3 different roles, or even more probably. One is that we're the actual provider of the service, so that's our service delivery role, and that's where that business as usual comes into it in this document. One of them is, as Councillor Bland suggests, that we're an advocate, and we demonstrate leadership on the issue, whether it's advocating to state government, a bit like the Mayor and I visiting the CEOs of some of the state departments. So it's about advocacy, but that'll never be our role in terms of the delivery, but we want to make sure that everybody who needs to know knows about it. And the third part is where we may partner, and this may be where the Landscape Board is and some of the activities that the LAP program do around partnering to get something done in our community. So it could be any of those types of relationships or service delivery types of activity, and it will vary depending on which layer you want to look at some of these things. And you're right, Councillor Arthur, some of them aren't our specific business, but that doesn't mean we don't have a leadership or advocacy role around that particular issue.
Once again, I get back to the point that they all made. You're looking at a 4-year period. A 4-year period, not a 25-year period. And so what they were saying, and this is not my words, that's what they're saying. Why don't you have a strategic plan against what you think you can actually achieve in that 4 years?
So remember,
because, you know, we'll come back here in 4 years' time or 5 years' time and we'll have virtually the same list. If you look at the other one, you know, like a lot of these things will always be ongoing. You're never going to get them in a 4-year plan.
Agree.
And, you know, like, for example, climate change, you know, maintain knowledge and awareness of scientific-based climate change issues applicable to the district. What's that got to do with council? Nothing, because you've got it every day. You know, like, for example, the Coombe Ag Group, they would be the people that disseminate that to their farmer groups. You know, is it a council job? Well, all we're doing is taking up, you know, an outlet by the Climate Conservation Council or the government and handing it on. And most of them have seen it at any rate. And are we going to have an opinion on climate change?
We have, councillor.
I would hope not.
We've got a policy position.
Well, no,
we didn't say too much.
Ambiguous there. We didn't say it was an
that was
emergency
our
or
opinion,
thing.
though.
Yeah.
We have got one, which gives me something to work with. If you're finished, councillor.
Yep.
Councillor Hill.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think we need to remember this is the community's plan, not the council's plan. And the fact is that the council will pull out of this plan things that we can achieve, as the CEO said. It was clearly explained to the people at the workshops that there were some things that council cannot deliver on its own and it could advocate for, or it could partner with other organisations, or it can do it itself as part of its ongoing activities. So I think the people who attended understood pretty clearly what it's about, and I think we need to just allow this to be the community's plan and then make decisions as a council what we can achieve out of that plan.
Now the councillors. Councillor Jensch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think, you know, the plan does have a considerable number of things that are longer term, but as has been said, our roles in various areas are about advocacy, facilitating and lobbying. And these are the things that we have to step up to the bat for, because quite frankly, if we leave it to higher authorities, whether state or federal or whatever, our people, our communities may not get viewed in a relevant manner. It is our job to ensure that they are put up and that they are treated in a relevant, respectful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to enter the debate? Otherwise, we have a motion that has been moved and seconded, councillors. There's no further discussion.
All I would add, Mayor, is I actually think I can sort of see where Councillor Arthur's coming from, but at the same time, I think the way it's been explained in this document doesn't commit anyone to anything. So they're actually quite broad statements that can be filled with a lot of different things underneath them. I don't think it locks us into anything in specific. It just guides the direction of where we're going to spend money in the next 4 years. And so long as we can review it every year, and it would be handy to say always how we're achieving those objectives as we go throughout the year, I think that would be really good. I think what's been missing in previous plans is that ability to reflect back and go, these are the things that we've done that meet that plan, so that people can see, so that we're not having these discussions, so people can actually see what we're doing and how it fits with that plan. And then it then grows the confidence in people having input into the next one that something will happen. I don't think we're good at actually telling our own story about how we are doing some of those things. And so I think the way it's been presented is actually very good, and is quite I think it's quite workable from our perspective.
Thank you. There's no further debate. Councillor Bland will shut.
Consider it closed.
Close. Okay, councillors, the motion is that council adopt the 2021 to 25 Community Vision Plan as tabled. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move to item, presume 3, which is the rating review. Councillors. Where's it gone? Yeah, where it is. There's a recommendation, councillors. Does someone wish to wish with that? Councillor Taylor, are you going to move the recommendation?
I'll move that way.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree will be the seconder. Councillor Taylor, you wish to speak to it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'll reserve.
Okay. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to it?
Not at the moment, thanks.
Right, it's open for discussion. Do we need a description at all? Anyone don't want to
The
explain the
description,
process?
I can explain the process, and you were all part of the workshop, and David Hope has reflected the outcomes of that workshop for your deliberation now as part of council consideration. I'll just draw your attention first of all, before I forget, the dates that we're suggesting we've changed because we think they're too close to this meeting for it to be circulated and socialised in the community. So we're pushing those dates out to the week beginning the 15th of March, so giving it a fortnight before we actually do the community consultation. Otherwise, we were doing it next week and we don't think the community would have time to deliberate on the paper.
Mover and seconder, are okay with that?
So are we altering the date in the motion?
Have to.
We
yeah.
will, yep, we've done that.
15th of March to the 22nd of March, or how much? Not expending the other side?
No, and the date, so it's the Monday, council day, it's Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday. And then on page 2 of the report, there is an executive summary that draws your attention to the changes and the recommendations in the report, particularly around the rating categories, the weightings that some categories have compared to the residential, which is the general rate, and the changes that are recommended over the fixed charges that has a 2-year transition period. So moving from our current 360 a year to a fixed charge of 250 for the second year, also for the first year of implementation, and then 150 as a set fee for the second year of the implementation. And then ongoing, it would be 150 until we have the next rate review. And they were the significant changes, really. It's around the category, the decrease in the fixed charge, and the weightings on the commercial and industrial.
Yep. Councillor Taylor, I'm going to take it as you're not closing debate, but you want to ask a question.
Question, what will the format of community engagement be?
So the community engagement will be face-to-face, at this stage, 3 towns across the district. It will be a presentation that highlights the changes that I've just outlined to you, and then there will be some discussion and some tables that show, I suppose, a bit like you've got in your last pages, to show who would have a decrease, who would have an increase, and really just trying to draw people's attention to which category they may be in, what they can expect from their rates, what the rationale behind it. So it will be a PowerPoint presentation with all that information in it.
So on the basis, sorry, Ma, through you, on the basis of that, will you have representative figures available for those who may be obvious objectors?
So very good question, Councillor. We could have an example for each of the different categories to show what it might mean from a decrease, what sort of the profile of a business or a ratepayer, and what it might mean in practice. It's probably, we can look at maybe, you would imagine that the people who would have the most objection to it are the ones who have the greatest increase in their rates. And we can pull out, Leanne, I'm looking at you, that we could have some examples of what those categories, what falls into each of those categories, without anything that would give rise to identifying who that ratepayer might be. Given we only have small numbers, we would be very careful, so it would be a generalisation to a degree if we think that any example would lead to the identification of that person.
Could we just do it on value, so that if it was a property that's worth 152, $500,000.
This is what it looked like.
Yeah, this is what it would look like versus
What it is
town
now.
X, it's Y.
Yeah, we'll look at what makes the most sense, but generally, Councillor Taylor, you're suggesting examples where people can identify, is this me? Help them understand it.
Any further?
Just
Yep.
one question, quick question. I don't know if we should have it in here, or I would think it should be, but also that we maintain the ability to to set any rate increase at 10%. That hasn't been put in here.
The capping. you
Rate
want.
capping, you do it, councillor.
Yeah. So I just think it should be in there. That we maintain that capping of 10%. In the executive summary, I think it would be the place to put it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the capping is already part of a policy and is just part of every year-to-year budget discussion.
I think they need to know that, but I
Need
think
to be
there's
clear
no,
that it affects
you know, like
business.
there's a few cockies are pretty scared about the increase, you know, because they pay a lot of money rates now, and this is, you know, to be quite honest with this, is going to put more emphasis on the rural
I understand,
paying
Councillor.
than the urban. But we still do need that, and there may be others that will be affected, not just the farmers, by the 10%.
So I understand your point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne, but I would think that putting it in here locks you into that position for the next, until the next rate review. If you leave it outside of this, but as a policy, you have flexibility in 2 years' time if you want to change something in how rate capping occurs. So I think it's probably more, gives the council, and I'm only suggesting, more flexibility to leave it outside as a policy, which we adhere to, than putting it into something that will lock you in until the next rate review comes around.
So virtually the same as your discount of 85% for rural properties. It's outside of this, you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
So therefore, will you, sorry, Mr. Mayor, so therefore, in the public arena, we'll have that discussion on capping.
We could have a slide that shows the current policy around capping hasn't changed.
I think it probably needs to explain.
Needs
I
to be.
suspect we didn't get a lot of capping taken up, and I think that's purely lack of knowledge, and people just don't understand.
So council could choose to change that policy this year,
Yes, as with any policy, Mayor.
but this policy is a guide around the numbers as presented as a model. This doesn't lock council into varying the rate and the dollar
Absolutely not.
to take account of a large variance between land categories. For example, residential went up 10%, rural went up 25% in the next few weeks. Lock us in, this is a guide issue.
This is about the actual weighting.
The
and then
weighting,
the
yeah,
cents in the dollar is the one that changes year to
changes
year.
around.
Through you, Mayor.
Certainly.
Question. So if in the future council decides, look, when we set our budgets and we talk about this bucket of money council needs to run, if that bucket was for some reason to be smaller, then how much we charge, would that then change if our overall amount of bucket money changed? I'm trying to draw a correlation there. Is there one? Or are we all?
Question,
Try
councillor?
me again.
Okay, so I remember when we first started, Corinne was talking about the bucket of money that council needs to operate, and that how we raise our money is based on what overall we need to achieve in this bucket of money to run council, and therefore that's how we set our rates. If that bucket of money in the future is deemed to be that we don't need as much because we've made cost savings or we're doing things differently, or God forbid we amalgamate, or whatever reason, if that bucket of money required decreases, does that then have a flow on to the rate in the dollar or how we collect the money? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm looking at the rates officer here because I think my answer to that is no, but I'm just making sure.
You haven't got that speaker for Leanne, have we?
Yeah, we've got the speaker for you over there.
Yeah, really. Good, please. Turn her on.
And I suppose the other part of that question is, if we decide that our bucket of money needs to be 10 million a year, does that then change the rates the other direction?
The answer to that is definitely no. That's when you're looking at a rate increase, basically. So we would be having a conversation about CPIs at 5% this year, which it's not, but to recognise the inflationary aspect of costs to council, then there would need to be a rate rise that's based on CPI. Some councils then decide yes or no to that. The other conversation that council could have is that we think that we need, and it goes back to Councillor Arthur, and he will say that this is not the case, but if you have a desire to do more in your community, then really you've only got two sources of revenue, your rates or grants. And so if grants are not going to cover what you need to do as a council, then rates is your only lever to raise revenue. So you would be saying, we want to recognise the inflationary aspect of CPI, and so we need to put the rates up 2% or whatever it is. And we also think that as a council, we want to provide a new library, and I've made that up. So we need to actually then, but you can see what I'm saying. So you need to think about this. So if there's an increase in costs, then you only have two levers, grants and revenue, basically, rates, sorry. If you decrease costs, I've yet to see a council that actually goes backwards in that. It's just generally you have no rate increase.
I think the issue that I see going forward here is that whilst we might need to increase 2% for inflation or whatever, most farmers who have got a commodity or their livestock isn't always going up by that 2%. Sometimes the price can stay static for a long time, and you don't often see those increases in your commodity prices. So your ability to keep paying for the increases that council need every year to do their job becomes quite challenging for most people. Certainly in primary production, where it is so fickle as to what you get paid for your product at the end.
Yes.
And I don't know how we do that. Yeah.
A rate increase. I was just saying that's how the conversation goes.
Yeah, I understand.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Look, we're talking buckets. The bottom line is, in my opinion, if we decide how big the bucket is going to be, then our cloth is cut accordingly. We either have more projects or we have less. It really is that simple. You don't spend what you haven't got unless you're prepared to borrow, which we're not, if we can help it. But the reality is the bucket is the bucket. And if we earn less rates, capital into that bucket, it's less projects being done. It's all about the size of the bucket. It's not about anything else.
Well, just for public consultation,
Yeah,
emphasise 10% rate cap
You'll have a slide specifically. on
slide
that, Mayor.
specifically around that, which is a separate policy. This is around, at the moment, the constant dollar anyway, so that debate is interesting in itself. Leanne, you don't want to add anything else to the process at this stage? No. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Who is the mover? You the mover? Who's the mover?
Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor, do you wish to close debate, councillor?
I do wish to say that this is a stringent move towards setting the inequity between low value properties and high value properties on the right road. Long overdue. Fantastic to see the work that's been done on it. And I really look forward to going out to public consultation on this. I would hope and stress, however, that the matter of rates is very confusing to the ratepayers, and therefore their reaction may be as expected, I guess, rather than unexpected. So I would like to see some really good thinking around how it's presented to those ratepayers during the public consultation. I'll close debate.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, councillors, everyone's aware that the recommendation is as it reads with that change in the timing of community engagement. Thursday, the 4th of March to the 9th, Monday, the 29th. Is that what we want? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? So that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That's the end of the meeting. Nothing else we need to discuss. You don't, no announcements we wish to make? Thank you, councillors. I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, councillor Roundtree.
Bye-bye. Again, you're muted. If you could stop the recording, it'd be fantastic.